Let's scoot ahead to a sort of debutante in the NWSL. The Utah Royals. Utah back in the mix. New year, new look, new ownership. We'll see if we can get it right the second time around. They had the number 1 overall pick this year's draft. They took 20-year-old Ali Sentnor out of UNC. Where should our expectations be around this expansion team?
I think it's going to be interesting. Sentnor scored 11 goals and had 7 assists in 23 matches for the Tar Heels last season. She's a number 1 overall pick for a reason. And I'll say, thinking of experienced players that they tried to add, we became fans of a lot of different teams during the last World Cup. And I would be very remiss if I did not mention Utah signing NWSL veteran Ifeoma Anamanu from the Nigeria Super Falcons, from our favorite teams watching in the World Cup. Anumanu had 14 caps for champion Gotham last season, and she has 100 caps in her NWSL career. So I love that as a move to just kind of okay, let's get a stabilizing veteran presence in here, somebody who plays on the international level, somebody who's played in this league for a long time. I think it's a really savvy move by the club. Utah also made, I think, a pretty savvy move, even if you want to call it from a marketing standpoint. They acquired Michaela Clough from your Orlando Pride. Clough played at Brigham Young University and is unsurprisingly a native of Utah.
I like the move. I mean, expansion team, you're building something from scratch, a lot like what we're doing here at the ITC. There's a lot of groundwork to be done. And I like the move. I think, expectations should be reasonable.
Yeah.
The top teams in this league are, again, they're there for a reason as well. So I think if you're Utah, you're building for the long term. You want to sort of set up a fan base, build an identity, good way to be able to connect with the local community as well. So I like the pickup. Kind of hurts my pride, my Orlando pride, not my personal pride. But I'm excited to see what this team looks like when they roll the ball out there on Sunday.
I think you should be. I mean, we talked about it a few months back with Chris from Soccer Dossier. I'm just going to go through a quick list of the last several number 1 overall picks in the NWSL draft. Emily Sonnet, Rose Lavelle, Andy Sullivan, Tierna Davidson, Sophia Smith, Emily Fox, Naomi Girma, Alyssa Thompson, Ali Sentnor. So, not a miss in that group.
No, not a single one. And if you didn't hear our NWSL draft coverage, I strongly encourage you to go back to check that video out. Chris was great. Talked us through pretty much the entire first round. Gave us a couple sleepers. We had to twist his arm a little bit. Shout out to Chris. And we'll be checking out his dossier coming up here as we approach next year's draft as well. But yeah, definitely go back and check that one out.
Nobody accost Chris for some of his projections. I mean, look, we all have projections. We all have takes. Chris was very hey, man, don't hold me to these, which is totally fair. But the dude does the work, does the studying, understands the draft. That's why, we found him and we're like, holy shit, this person actually knows about the NWSL draft. And so shout out to you, Chris. We appreciate you dropping some knowledge on us.
Yep, that's our guy. Let's scoot ahead. These Utah Royals, in their inaugural NWSL matchup, they are going to take on the Chicago Red Stars, led by goalkeeper Alyssa Nair, who still has smoke coming off her from her performance in the CONCACAF Gold Cup. They also traded their pick in a move to acquire center back Sam Staub. Big fan of her as well. 2023 NWSL Defender of the Year. Rough season last year from the gang from Chicago. Are they in a position to kind of turn things around, or is there just too much work to do with this squad? What are your expectations for where they might be headed?
It's going to be tough. Let's just keep it $150 here. Now I'm totally with you. Acquiring Sam Staub from the Washington Spirit was a good move, but it was also a necessary move because they needed to replace Tierna Davidson, who we previously had mentioned went to the Bats out in Gotham. So yeah, you're going to need Staub to step up there. Chicago appointed Lauren Donaldson as its manager on December 20th. Lauren's latest work was managing the Reggae Girls of Jamaica.
Let's go.
They made it to the knockout stage of the 2023 World Cup. And mind you, they made it to the knockout stage of the World Cup, and they were in a group that had Brazil and Germany in it. So pretty good work from Lauren. Now, obviously, Bunny's drawing a lot of attention there. So it's not like Lauren had a total deficit of talent, and we really liked their back line. But one thing we always talked about Jamaica's back line was their organization and them always being able to keep their shape. I'm curious to see if that is part of Donaldson's philosophy, part of his coaching. Now you put a center half like Sam Staub in there, and maybe they're like, hey, let's not give up 50 goals this season like the Red Stars did last year.
I love the pickup of Donaldson because that was the one thing. Obviously, we were on Bunny Watch.
Always.
Every second Jamaica was in action. But yeah, defensively, the back line, Rebecca Spencer in goal, they were locked down. They had some big dogs in that group, and they advanced into the knockout stage. That's the story of the World Cup for that team. Just defensively, they were a nightmare. Yep. And, if you're Chicago, where do you go looking for a new manager? That's probably a great place to start the process. And props to them. They locked down Donaldson and look to turn their fortunes around.
There are rumblings on WOSO Twitter after the hiring of Donaldson took place that they are, in fact, on Bunny Watch. And let me just tell you.
Ooh, buddy.
Would I like to see Bunny Shaw in our home league? Yes, I would. But also, don't take her from my Sky Blues.
Don't do my guy like that.
Yeah, come on. What are we doing here? My hometown club loses Megan Rapinoe, Emily Sonnet, and Rose Lavelle in one offseason. Don't sign away Bunny from my European club. What are we doing here?
It's tough because in a year where Baba Banda signs with my Orlando Pride, I would hate to see a talent probably of the same ilk leave one of your squads. But on the flip side, that would be tremendous for parity for the NWSL.
Be great.
Skyrocket Chicago right up into that mix. I think if we're saying that Banda basically turns Orlando Pride into maybe borderline top tier team, I can't imagine that Bunny Shaw wouldn't do the same for Chicago. I mean, she's an otherworldly talent and, obviously has a relationship with Donaldson. Can't really speak to the quality of that relationship, but Bunny was great in the World Cup, and obviously the team success is kind of all that matters there. I definitely don't wish that on you, as a city fan. But would be cool to see Bunny here stateside, just wrecking the NWSL. I mean, big time influx. You called for it, man. Like after the media rights deal, you're like, let's break out the checkbooks, loosen the purse strings, and let's bring over some players. And props to some of these ownership groups. They've made it happen. And it does feel like there's more to come. So definitely exciting times for the league as a whole. But yeah, that would definitely hurt your squad.
Yeah. I mean, if she's going to come over to the NWSL, for the love of God, at least come to the Reign. Like, there's a Jamaican spot right down the block in my neighborhood, Bunny. Like, let's go. Like, I like it. We can figure this out. So, Reign, if you got to open up the checks, because I will say, in all seriousness, what I say, like, don't take her from my Sky Blues. If the money's right, let them know you're not interested in playing anymore. Sell my contract if this money is right. So I'm always, always, always unequivocally in favor of the player getting the most money they could possibly get.
I also had a prediction about maybe seeing the first $1 million transfer fee at some point this calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
If we've got Kunanaji at her number, Banda at her number, you got to imagine Bunny Shaw maybe approaches that $1 million number, especially to make the move all the way across the pond. So definitely something to watch. A couple more teams left on the docket here. Let's go to Angel City. They take on in-state rival, another expansion team, Bay FC. But Angel City, what do we need to know about this team?
They finished 5th in the table last season. They lost in the first round of the playoffs to my Seattle Reign. As I mentioned, your boy was there.
Mm-hmm.
Cool fans. We were sitting sort of by there. They had a bunch of supporters come up from LA for the match. Really nice people. Nothing sketchy between any of us. We were telling them hey man, you guys got nothing to be ashamed of at the end of the loss. They were all super cool about it. And while that was a bummer to watch their team lose in the playoffs, we got to get another gigantic bummer out of the way. The club announced on February 15th, 23-year-old Japanese winger Jun Endo tore her ACL during training camp. Endo was a massively impressive player during the World Cup for Japan. She remains a promising young talent. I was tweeting about her. She has an attitude and an audaciousness about her play that it symbolizes the best part of football, in my opinion. So we wish her a full and speedy recovery. I look forward to watching her play again. Angel City added Costa Rican midfielder Rocky Rodriguez, who comes over from the Portland Thorns.
Let's go.
Expect Rocky to play a lot, because that's what she does. And if you have her on your squad, you put her on the pitch. But we have to mention, and you talked about it a little bit during your Orlando Pride discussion there, Angel City acquired Messiah Bright from Orlando for a $130,000 intra-league transfer fee. Orlando drafted Messiah Bright number 21 overall in the 2023 draft. That's good value, Bubba. she was a finalist for Rookie of the Year and led all rookies with 7 goals. I thought she was wildly impressive for your squad last season. I believe at one point in our previous podcast where we would maybe gamble on such things, and Messiah scoring a goal won us some money during that previous podcast. I had compared some parts of her play to Harry Kane, and I believe in it. I think she has a chance to be a real star in this league.
I mean, she definitely shined last year, jumped off the screen. I felt definitely a sink in my stomach when I saw that she was going out to Angel City. Kind of softened when I saw how excited Messiah Bright was to be heading out to LA. Who knows? Maybe she's got some acting aspirations that she wants to kind of crank up on the side. But unbelievable talent. To get her 21 in the draft and then lose her, kind of rough, but she's so good that it's just like, I don't know. I'm just excited to have that kind of talent in the league. Still so young, still up and coming. So yeah, we definitely wish her well. And I like this Angel City squad. A lot of good players on it up and down the roster. Rocky Rodriguez, who you mentioned, Messiah Bright, Ali Riley, Amandine Henry, and Alyssa Thompson. You know, not yet 20 years old, got that U.S. Women's National Team experience. I mean, there's the naysayers out there that question maybe like her size. But I mean, she plays real big, and I think we're just going to kind of put that off to the side. I actually predict a big season from Thompson. I'm really excited to see her play.
I mean, we talked about those number 1 overall picks. I mean, she clearly has the pedigree. I thought it was interesting to see her too, like see her family, her support system that she had in that Netflix documentary. I mean, she was at the World Cup. She saw firsthand what it's like to lose in a major tournament. And I wonder, like, you hear about that in other sports of like learning from those failures. And it wasn't even like her personal failures. Like there was nothing she did in the World Cup that was going to change anything as a young player like that. But for her to kind of witness it, she strikes me as a very bright young woman too. And so I would imagine somebody there who's kind of observing all that, taking all that in. It's interesting to see what kind of lessons she'll take from it. I mean, she was taken number 1 overall for a reason.
Absolutely. One take chip from me that she quiets all the haters out there.
I like it.
All right, let's scoot ahead to the team that Angel City's taking on this weekend. And that is the other expansion team from one of my old stomping grounds, San Francisco, Bay FC. Big personnel moves from them as well. I'm going to clear out here a little bit. Where do we even get started with kind of what they did? Massive kind of first, like sometimes you kind of want to tread lightly. It's a new team. And they were like, fuck that. We're just going to like flip some tables, make some noise and get rowdy. Where do you want to get started with this Bay FC team?
I mean, what's not to like about them other than the fact that they are a San Francisco team? Mm. And that just might be NBA bias coming from me there. I think there's a lot to like about them, actually. They drafted Savannah King, number 2 overall out of the University of North Carolina. They signed a 20-year-old forward, the Ghanaian Princess Marfo. They signed 32-year-old Scottish center half Jen Beatty from Arsenal FC. You might be familiar with that club. Those all look like pretty great moves that kind of cover the spectrum of like, okay, let's get some vets in here. Let's get our young players in here. But I mean, we just got to get to the headliners here. The first co-headliner, Nigerian superstar Asisat Oshoala. 21 goals for a little club called Barcelona last season. She is an absolute menace out there. Just speed, power, precision, skill. And I was like, okay, wow, what a splash from Bay FC. A great signing. You gotta love that. You take Oshoala off of Barcelona, who seems like a character player. You read her quotes in these news articles, all that stuff, but probably felt like I'm just not getting enough playing time at Barcelona because she's a superlative type player. And I was like, great move, Bay FC. Excited to watch you. Then they turn around and sign Zambian superstar Rachel Kundananji, who made a little bit of a name for herself in a little league called Liga F for Madrid FC. She scored 25 goals in Liga F last season. Now, I do think everybody, though, is waiting with bated breath here. Kundananji was stretchered off. She was seen in tears as she was being stretchered off in their recent Olympic qualifying match. Like searching the corners of women's footballing internet, I found a website called Zamfoot, which describes itself as, quote, the home of Zambian football, end quote. They had a lot of stuff on there. Again, maybe I'm an old man. Maybe I'm being fooled by the internet, but it looked like the people doing the reporting over there at Zamfoot looked like they really cared about the sport. It looked like they were trying to really make sure that they were reporting news. That reporting stated that she could miss more than 6 weeks with that injury. I hope she's well within that timeline. So we'll have to see on that. But to your point, Bay FC did not waste any time with Oshuala and Kundanaji. And you had talked about, too, the encouraging signs it is to see teams sign players to big deals to make sure that these women are paid at a rate that they should be. So even waiting for what happens with Kundanaji, I am extremely excited to see what Bay FC is doing because they're entering the league and making a splash right away.
Yeah, totally agree. You already mentioned Savvy King, who they picked up in the draft. Stanford's Maya Doms as well. Our guy Chris from Soccer Dossier, also super high on her, if I recall correctly. So it's not just the vets that they brought in. Nice mix of experienced players and young players. Even with this being an expansion team, I think they do have the roster to, if they can get it together, like really make an impact, kind of maybe even sneak into the bottom of that top tier, but definitely a team that should absolutely have playoff aspirations.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we talked about it with Bonda. When you sign Oshuala, you have one of the best players in the league off rip.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no question about it. So they should be able to score. It'll be interesting to see how the defense holds up, but they feel like a must watch to me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have a new squad in there and just pretty loaded squad just dropped into the league. That's got to be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
This weekend's going to be pretty action-packed for sure. One more team to hit in our NWSL preview, and that is Racing Louisville. They finished 9th last season. A couple recognizable names on this roster. Not quite the same level of heavy hitters as some prior teams that we've talked about. 9th place finish out of the playoffs last season. Not really sure they have the firepower to kind of like reach that top tier. But let me know what kind of offseason this Racing Louisville side had.
Interesting offseason for our pals in Louisville, as I believe the correct pronunciation is, as a guy from originally born and raised in Ohio. Now, I was Northeast Ohio, but all my pals from Southern Ohio think it's Louisville. I think it's a very lazy American inflection there. I digress, of course I do. I thought it was an interesting offseason. They signed Bev Yanez, former NWSL MVP finalist during her playing days. Yanez has taken over the reins as Louisville's manager. So that's an interesting change right off the top. She's charged with improving the club, but she has some talent to work with. We have Brazilian Adi Borges, Savannah DeMello, and Jalen Howell. All of them are returning. But then Racing went out and grabbed 25-year-old South African striker Linda Motaulo, who some folks might remember as an important player for South Africa, or as Dino often told us during our coverage of the World Cup, Banyana Banyana.
Banyana
As I
Banyana.
believe. A wonderfully entertaining team to watch during the World Cup. Racing also added Taylor Flint. Now, Taylor Flint used to go by Taylor Korniak. I'm guessing Flint is now her married name. They're adding Flint to their midfield. Flint is one of the more dangerous aerial threats in the NWSL, and one of the players who helped bring about the phrase to this fine podcast and our previous gambling podcast, tall girl bias, which was created by my lovely 5'11" wife, who loves a tall footballer who can go out there and head goals in. Korniak is quite tall and is an absolute menace out there on corner kicks, on any set piece. So I think it's going to be real interesting to see what Louisville does with that influx of talent.
Taylor measuring in at 6'1".
Hot damn. Half inch
Which
shorter
puts her
than me.
Puts her right up there at the top end of the tall girl bias.
I would say.
And yeah, like I said, they take on my Orlando Pride, so I will have some thoughts on them when we reconvene to talk about what we saw in the first weekend of NWSL action. Let's close things out with some predictions. I say we pick a Shield winner who's going to be at the top of the standings when the regular season's all said and done. And then I also want to make predictions around who we think makes the final. And then we'll also pick our 2024 NWSL champions. So I'll go first with my Shield pick. Give me Gotham FC. I think they're loaded. I think they're deep. I think it's going to take the rest of the league a while to kind of figure out what exactly it is that they're doing and how a team might be able to start thinking about how to defend them. So that's my pick. I think they end the season at the top of the standings.
Buddy, I warned you, I think it was before the recording started, I warned you this might be a two brewski podcast. I think it has to be in honor of the picks.
Let's go.
Okay, for show purposes, I should probably pick somebody else as the Shield winner. I can't. I think you're right. I mean, Gotham, too much talent. over the course of the season, you think about the traditional European footballing model of you play every squad twice, and the team with the most wins and draws and the most points in general pretty much takes home the crown. It's tough to see any team winning more matches than the Bats. So I'm going to agree with you. We're not doing pardon the interruption. I think I would be Tony Kornheiser in this mix. But yeah, I'm not arguing with that. I think the Bats are going to take it.
I don't think I could ever forgive you for making me Mike Wilbon of this podcast.
I didn't want to be Wilbon.
I don't
Chicago. Chicago's going to win.
Chicago. Tear it out, Chicago. Derek. Yeah. Anyhow, so let's make a pick with regard to the 2024 NWSL Championship. I'm going to go a little off the board here. Give me Jonathan Hidalgo's Washington Spirit.
Okay.
2024 NWSL champions as they squeak by fellow finalist, my Orlando Pride.
Wow, yes.
That's my final that I'm predicting.
Okay, that's phenomenal. All right.
Yeah, I like Hidalgo's. I like Trinity Rodman.
Mm-hmm.
I like what they've done over there with regard to kind of like a little bit of a youth movement. I just think that knockout football is tricky, and November's a long time away. That's a long time for Hidalgo's to kind of install exactly what he wants to do. And I just like the roster. And I think Orlando, I mean, is it a homer pick? Definitely not. No, it might be. Orlando strikes me as the kind of team, even if Banda goes absolutely bananas in the league, I just kind of imagine they're the type of squad that I think maybe kind of runs out of gas, but I can see like a real dream kind of run for them, make it to the playoffs, maybe win one, maybe win two. Now all of a sudden they're in the final. That would be incredible. But I don't think they quite have the firepower to get all the way to the apex. So yeah, that's my finals pick. Give me Washington over my Orlando Pride.
That's phenomenal, man. I fucking love that. Barbara Banda getting to the final, taking the team. I'll tell you, you're a brave man for thinking that Banda gets to the final and doesn't finish the job. But, you know, you got Trinity on the other side. So I fucking love this pick. All right. So, we're doing this. Dino surprised me with this. So, again, I'm sorry if I am forsaking the name of content, but I am telling you, again, I don't know if we're doing this podcast too often. I'm taking the Spirit also not to win. I'm taking the Spirit to appear in the final.
I like it.
And I know it doesn't have to be East versus West, but I think we end up with that because I'm with you on all the Washington stuff. You have Rodman, you have Heraldez as the manager, you have Andy Sullivan in the midfield, you have Ashley Hatch up top. I love it. I think they can make it to the final. My NWSL champion. And you know what? I don't feel wonderful saying this, as we alluded to. I'm a Seattle man. I think they're going to lose to the Portland Thorns because, like I said, the Portland Thorns win fucking football matches. It's what they do, man. They are one of the elite clubs in the league.
Let's go.
I talked about Sam Coffey. We talked about Olivia Moultrie. We talked about, obviously, Hina Sujita and Sophia Smith. I didn't even mention, because I'm a dope, they signed Jessie Fleming, the Canadian international over from Chelsea, to add to that midfield.
Wow.
So let's get it. I think the Thorns end up winning the NWSL championship, and Christine Sinclair, like the legend she is,
oh my God,
walks off the pitch, raising one more trophy. Maybe she plays the last 10 minutes of the match, and the legend gets the curtain call that she deserves.
God damn it, you are Kornheiser. I believe I
had that.
I'm so jealous of that pick. If I didn't take my Orlando Pride, I actually would be a little bit more jealous. But tremendous pick. Jessie Fleming, obviously Canada's best player by a good margin.
Yeah,
against the U.S. and a tremendous player throughout the tournament that we just watched. So awesome pick. I think we're going to have a lot of this right. That's my final prediction. With that out of the way, anything else you want to hit before we get out of here?
I think we covered the whole league, my good man.
Top to bottom. All right, man. I think we did it. This has been another episode of Into the Channel. Remember, subscribe or follow Into the Channel, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen at ITC_pod on X. Everyone listening right now, thank you. You absolutely make the show better which we appreciate tremendously. And obviously, we try to cover as much of the league as we could in a short amount of time. I'm sure we missed a ton. So please chime in. We want to hear about your squad. We want to hear about what we got right. We want to hear about more so about what we missed. Like Grant always says, this is a learning podcast, and we're here to learn and enjoy the games. And yeah, we're just thankful every day that we kind of get to do this and hang out with all of you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys checking us out. Dino is very humble about his like NWSL ascent, like he's watching the league for the first time. I don't mean to purport myself like I'm some kind of expert. I've been watching the league closely, well, relatively closely. I'm sure probably not as closely as some of the folks checking out these videos. So I've been paying attention for like 2.5, 3 years. So I don't mean to act like I'm some kind of expert for all the history. Tell us what we got wrong. Tell us what we missed. Help us get up to speed on some of these other clubs. Please tell me, am I pronouncing Louisville wrong? Is this a stereotype I developed as a native Ohioan? Help us along this journey as we continue to cover this league, which just has to be considered one of the absolute best women's football leagues in the world. We're excited to watch it with you guys.
Absolutely. And yeah, big thank you to my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel, for being, God damn it, the Tony Kornheiser to my Michael Wilbon. I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate it. Good night, Canada.